Good morning, y'all. So I'm hopping on here to talk about a very important topic that is going to continue this series of how we as parents and we as a community can protect our children and help them preserve their purity so that they can grow up into responsible, respectable, productive, and healthy young adults ready to create families in a more safe environment that's going to actually help everyone thrive. So before I share this very important message, I'm sorry, y'all. I've got to take out one earphone because I don't want to be too loud, just out of consideration for my neighbors that share the same space as I do, because I do live in a multi-family home. If a lot of y'all newcomers haven't visited this channel before, I just want to be mindful of my neighbors that share the same space as I do, because this is a multi-family home, and so I don't want my tone to come off aggressive, or I don't want to be too loud to where I may say something that is truth behind it, but that could step on that person's toes, because I don't want to step on anybody's toes on purpose, because that would be purposely triggering negative emotions out of somebody, and that's antagonizing somebody. That's like provoking a dog or poking a bear, and I don't want to do that. So, but with that being said, is also a disclaimer that I want to make, that I absolutely have nothing against anybody that is a part of the LGBTQ community, because at the end of the day, anybody that's a part of that community is still a human being and should still be treated with respect, the same way that us who are not a part of that community will want to be treated with respect. So I say this to say that I mean absolutely no harm with everything that I am about to say, but what I am about to say, it needs to be said because this is in the best interest of the children. Because our children are pure and they're innocent, and they come into the world not knowing, meaning that their minds are not on the same level as us adults. It's expected for us adults to reach a certain level of maturity in the mind to where we can use good judgment to make responsible decisions that will not put ourselves and others in harm's way on a mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical level. And so I say this to say that we all, regardless of whatever lifestyle we choose to live in our private lives, we must come to a mutual agreement that we have to leave children out of adult spaces. Children are off limits when it comes to exposing them to things that are meant to stay in adult spaces, whether it's coming from the LGBTQ community or whether it's coming from adults who are heterosexuals. Even if it's adults that are heterosexuals, it still doesn't make it right to expose children to what's supposed to be in adult spaces. There has to be perimeters set around children to where they can just focus on being children and just grow up pure. That's what they need to focus on. Because when our children are being exposed to adult content in any kind of way, then it compromises our children's purity. It compromises our children's subconscious mind, because that's where our memory is. And so it sabotages our children having a chance to grow up as functioning, productive, healthy young adults. And listen, don't get me wrong. Again, I'm not here to bash anybody that's a part of the LGBTQ community. I would even still say good morning to you, because you're still a human being. But we have to know when to draw the line. Just with adults and children in general, we have to know when to draw the line. Now, in this case, I'm not talking about heterosexual adults, because of this specific post that I saw. It's about the LGBTQ community for today. I will do another video about heterosexual adults drawing the line with children another day. But with that being said, I saw an IG post that was made by Tyrese. And if anybody on here that does not know who Tyrese is, he's a famous R&B male singer, and he played the role, a major role in Fast and Furious. And basically what he did was he made a post on Instagram showing Snoop Dogg criticizing LGBTQ characters in a children's movie. And it looks new because I've never seen this particular children's movie before, but he basically put together a caption that I agree with 100%, where Tyrese spoke on how we must protect our children by allowing them to grow in a safe space, to help them grow up pure and to not be exposed to what's for adults only. I agree with him 100%, because as he said himself, children belong to God. And yes, they do. So actually, God trusts us to do the right thing when he blesses us with children. He trusts us to keep our children pure as much as possible by not exposing them to what's only supposed to be for adults, and rightfully so, because they are children. So it's not appropriate to expose whatever type of lifestyle we choose to live as adults to our children, regardless of how we identify ourselves. I'm going to say it like that, because I want to choose my words carefully on here, because even though I am very big on speaking the truth, I still want to be mindful of the community guidelines on YouTube. And It's just all about respect and boundaries. I cannot promote the importance of us adults having respect and boundaries when it comes to our children, to keep them pure, and then I don't apply the same thing to myself, because then that will make me a hypocrite. And I'm here to tell you, I refuse to be that. Then that would defeat the purpose of me using this platform that God blessed me with to do pure work that's in the best interest of our children, because this channel is not for me. This channel is for our children. But with that being said, I agree with Tyrese 100% when he said that children are from God, and therefore we are supposed to allow our children to grow up in a safe space to preserve their purity as much as possible. Absolutely. By not exposing what's for adults only to children. I agree with him 100% on that. And so I say this to say that when adults expose what's for adults only, even in subtle ways, in shows that's supposed to be for children, in movies that's supposed to be for children, then, and I have to say this, y'all, okay? Because do I feel comfortable talking about this? No. It may not seem like it because of how calm my approach is, but make no mistake about it, I don't feel comfortable talking about this. But this is something that needs to be said because our children are being targeted the most. And as you can see, this is a celebrity, a well-known celebrity that's speaking out against what is not deemed appropriate for our children. And so that right there is enough said in itself, within itself, that no matter how uncomfortable doing this type of work that needs to be done, it needs to be done. So with that being said, whenever there are adults that put together these scripts and anime characters to be placed in front of our children on these television shows and in these movies that also have a little sprinkle of the LGBTQ influence in these movies and TV shows that's supposed to be for children, that is when the shows and movies that's supposed to be for children are no longer considered children shows and children movies. Why? Because then introducing children to things that are only supposed to be for adults, that is what you call corruption. At that point, you are corrupting our children to accept a personal lifestyle that you chose or that you may have chosen as an adult for themselves on a subconscious level. And that is not okay, because that is what you call corrupting and sabotaging our children's minds that are not even fully developed yet, which is wrong. That is so very wrong on so many levels. That's just like purposely using chemicals to sabotage the growth of somebody's food supply as a farmer before the process can even get started from the seed. Because that's where the growth comes from. It comes from the seed. And that's just wrong. Why? Because not only are you sabotaging that farmer's food supply for his family, you're also sabotaging the food supply for other families as well, which that is how that farmer makes a living, earns a living, by providing a food supply for other people's families as well. So when I paint the scenario into that perspective, hopefully that can help other adults to see just how very impactful their decisions can have on children, especially in a case like this. Because at the end of the day, listen, I'm not saying that you as an adult should not be however you identify yourself in your private life. I'm not saying that. And also, if people go to Tyrese's post, which I'll definitely post a link to his post, so that y'all can click on it and see exactly which post I'm talking about. If people actually go to his original post and read his caption, he was not shaming the LGBTQ community at all. He didn't say anything disrespectful. He didn't cross any boundaries with that particular community. He didn't bash that community. He didn't say anything that was offensive about that community. He focused his attention on the children. And rightfully so, because he's a father. And I 100% support him focusing on how the children are affected by this influence. That's not appropriate for children, because I'm a mother myself. And I'm very big on not exposing our children to things that are not appropriate for them. Because then it basically would be just like how the farmer illustration that I use. That's exactly what it would be like, because again, our children's minds are not even fully developed yet. So we have to give our children that safe space and time to grow, to grow into who they are as people. But let them do so on their own space as children. We have to draw the line between adult spaces and children's spaces. It matters. It's not appropriate to mix adult spaces with children's spaces. That's not okay. If that was the case, then that would mean that we as parents wouldn't feel offended by pedophilia. And this is what I mean, if nobody knows what that word means. If it was appropriate for us as adults to mix adult spaces with children's spaces, then that would mean that us parents would not feel highly offended by some adults who are pedophiles, who prey on young kids. That would also mean that us parents, some of us parents, would not feel highly offended by a man that is 25 years old preying on or grooming a 15-year-old girl. And mind you, this is a heterosexual adult that we're talking about. So then what's different with it being a adult that's from the LGBTQ community? What's different? The only difference is the preference, because I'm trying to use my words carefully on here. The only difference is the preference. But the principle still remains. The principle does not change. The principle of the matter is that adult spaces should not mix with children's spaces. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. It's not appropriate. And when you have movie directors and, TV directors that come up with these scripts and they're sprinkling the LGBTQ influence into these children movies and children TV shows, it corrupts their minds. It corrupts their spirits. And that's not okay. That is never okay. Us as adults, how we choose to live our lives, that should be private. That should be private. We should not involve children into how we choose to live our lives as adults. It's just not okay. And this is the reason why I do what I do. There is nothing pure about an adult introducing things that are not appropriate for children. Nothing pure about that. Therefore, these movies and TV shows, including some of these books that are promoting, or should I say pushing, this LGBTQ influence onto our children, that is unclean. There's nothing pure about that. And I will also leave the link about how you have some authors that try to subtly introduce the LGBTQ influence onto our kids in some of these books as well. Because if anybody that's new to this channel and that haven't watched this video I made about my personal experience with that from a children's book with my son, I will leave a link to that as well at the bottom. But with that being said, this is why I do what I do. It's not to bash anybody, but it's to raise awareness of what needs to come to an end. This needs to come to an end. Absolutely. Children are off limits. I've said this before, actually, in a previous video, that children are off limits. Children are off limits. And we're living in times where right is wrong and wrong is right. And so I say this to say even further that when children are being exposed on a subconscious level to this LGBTQ influence, basically what that does is it introduces them to something that is dysfunctional. And that's not okay at all. And this actually threatens the family unit. This actually, it is slowly it slowly attacks the process of our children growing up to be productive. Because creating a family, that is actually something that's productive. And to speak from a spiritual point of view, from a biblical standpoint, creating families, that is a natural, productive part of life that was originally intended by God. That is a part of his original purpose. And yes, I'm speaking from a spiritual point of view. That is what I do in my videos. For anybody that don't know, I speak on things like this from a spiritual point of view. Because whether some people realize it or not, this is a spiritual warfare that is going on. It goes deeper than what appears to the eyes. And I need a lot of people to understand this, because our children are being targeted the most. And our children are being targeted the most because of the fact that they're pure and they're innocent and they honestly don't know. Our children's minds are not fully developed to where they can use good judgment to separate what's pure and what's not, what's okay and what's not, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Their minds are not fully developed for that. That's where we as parents come in and we supervise what our children watch. Because at the end of the day, I, as a parent, I cannot tell these movie directors what to do. That's not my place. But what I can do is stress the importance for us parents to supervise what our children watch, what our children listen to, and what our children read as well. We have to supervise them because of the fact that our children's minds are not fully developed yet. Things are just getting started for our children. And we don't want outside influences such as this LGBTQ influence. We don't want any outside influences to corrupt our children's growing process. We don't want outside influences to corrupt our children from growing up pure. We don't want outside influences to sabotage our children from producing in a healthy way. Now, this will definitely be an ongoing topic, because this is a lot to dissect. And I just say this to say that, y'all, it's time. It's really, really time for us adults to do the right thing. I will speak on that, because again, I'm not here to tell an adult how to live. That is God's place. He tells us how to live a righteous lifestyle in his word, the Bible. So that is his place to tell adults. However an adult chooses to identify themselves, it's God's place to tell adults how to live a righteous lifestyle, not mine. But I do believe that I, as a parent, have a responsibility, not just to my child, but also to other children. I do feel responsible to make sure that our children are growing up in a safe and healthy environment on a mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical level. And to protect our children from outside influences that would corrupt them. I do not support that at all. Therefore, these children movies and children shows, if it's not just strictly for children, then these are not children shows and movies. It doesn't matter if we are sprinkling heterosexual things in children's movies and shows, because that's still supposed to stay in an adult space. It doesn't matter if it's an LGBTQ type of thing that's being sprinkled in these children movies and shows. That also is supposed to stay in an adult space. Because me personally, I don't discriminate. I don't discriminate at all. I don't have one foot in and one foot out. If it's anything that is dealing with content that's only supposed to be for adults, it needs to be kept far away from children. At all times, it needs to be kept away far from children. So we as adults, we have to do the right thing for these children. When we bring children to this world, it's no longer just about us. It's about them as well. So we have to keep in mind that what we do, it affects them as well. It doesn't matter if we choose to acknowledge it or not. It's just a fact that we cannot avoid. It's an inevitable fact. So, but that's it for now, because again, this is an extensive topic that has to be dissected. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to this public library, because I do have something else important to take care of. But definitely stay tuned for more, because this series will continue, because Tyrese, you sounded the alarm, okay? And basically gave me confirmation that the work that I'm doing, it needs to be done. And so I'm going to keep it going. But that's it for right now, y'all. Y'all stay tuned for more. Y'all stay safe out there. Y'all be blessed. And we going to keep this series going so that we can protect our children and create a better outcome for them than what we had. That's what it's about.